Hello and welcome to the Monday, August 7th, 2023 meeting of the Wayzata Planning Commission. I hereby call the meeting to order. My name is Larissa Stockton and I'm the chair of the Planning Commission. I have a few words about how to participate in this evening's meeting. We have a meeting ID number of 880-7355-0899, passcode 778665. Members of the public may attend the Planning Commission meeting in person, watch it and listen remotely by viewing the meeting on Channel 8 WCTV and at the city's website at wayzata.org/WCTV. Public comment during the public forum and/or public hearing portions of the meeting may be provided in person at the meeting in advance or by logging into the Zoom call and raising your hand during the public hearing. When your name is called in the meeting, you'll be seen and heard in our council chambers and in the cable channel. You'll be asked to unmute, and then you may begin your comment. All public comments must include your full name and address. The city encourages comments or questions about items on the agenda, and when possible, requests that you submit them in advance by emailing public comments at wayzata.org, calling city staff at 952-404-5323, or mailing Wayzata City Hall at 600 Rice Street East, Wayzata, Minnesota, 55391. Attention, public comment. Great. Next on the agenda is our roll call. Director Gellner, would you please take the roll?
Yes. Commissioner Schwalbe.
Here.
Commissioner Sorensen.
Here.
Commissioner Douglas.
Here.
Chair Stockton.
Here.
Commissioner Severson.
Here.
Commissioner Elk.
Here.
And Chair, please note that Commissioner Merriam is absent this evening.
Perfect. Thank you. Next, we have approval of this evening's agenda. Does anybody have any questions or proposed changes to the agenda? If not, may I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Sorensen. May I have a second?
Second. Schwalbe.
Thank you, Commissioner Schwalbe. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The motion passes and the agenda is approved. Next, we have the approval of the consent agenda. This evening consent agenda consists of one item, the approval of meeting minutes of July 17th, 2023. Does anyone have any questions or comments or want to pull it for discussion? All good? Okay, can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved, Severson.
Thank you, Commissioner Severson. May I have a second?
Second. Schwalbe.
Thank you, Commissioner Schwalbe. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Then opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Motion passes, and the consent agenda is approved. Fantastic. Okay. Now we're moving on to the public hearing item. And this evening we have one item in the public hearing, which is consideration of planned unit development general plan, shoreland residential planned unit development conditional use permit, PUD, CUP, and zoning map amendment or rezoning for Westway condominiums at 201 Lake Street East. Director Gellner, do we have a presentation?
Yes.
Perfect.
I will begin the presentation, and consulting planner Eric Swaber will provide more content within the presentation, then I'll conclude as well at the end. Westway Condominiums is a proposal located at 201 Lake Street East. The owner is Lowell Zitzloff, present this evening, as well as the applicant is Westway LLC. Here is an aerial photograph of the site with the property line outlined in blue. You can see its proximity to Lake Minnetonka as well as Lake Street. The property is zoned C4A, Limited Central Business District. The proposal this evening is to rezone the property to PUD, and the property is guided in our comprehensive plan as Central Business District. Here's a closer aerial view of the property. You can see Edgewood Court is on the west side of the property, and Ferndale Ridge Townhomes. There's a single-family home to the northwest. On the north side is Wayzata Villas. This is a multifamily property. And to the east are two new developments in the recent years. Melvin's 235 is an office building, and Ventana Apartments as well. Here's a view of the existing building, which would be demolished under this proposal. And here's a summary of the requests this evening. The first is a planned unit development general plan for a 106,000 square foot, 3-story mixed-use building. It would have 38 residential condominiums, 3 commercial condominiums on Lake Street, and then 3 flexible spaces on Lake Street that could be used for either commercial or residential condominiums. The second request this evening is for a shoreland residential planned unit development conditional use permit for an acronym that's a PUD-CUP. Now, this is for residential development when it's in close proximity to Lake Minnetonka, and we'll detail that for you in a moment. The third is the zoning map amendment to rezone the property from C4A to PUD. And lastly, a design review was conducted. We identified that no design deviations are necessary, and so the design review is done administratively at that point since it appears to all conform to our standards. I'll turn it over to consulting planner Eric Swaber to run through the details of the application.
Thank you, Community Development Director Gellner. Thank you, Chair and Planning Commission. Little description of the existing conditions. There's currently a 33,000 square foot, 2-story building on site. You could see that in beige close to Lake Street. Currently, there is a surface parking lot just to the north of the building, but you will see that there is an access directly onto Lake Street, kind of on the east side of the building, and then onto Edgewood Court itself. Essentially, the north half of the lot is in a natural state with a stormwater pond shown there in blue and a wetland that has been delineated shown in green. There is right-of-way both on Lake Street and Edgewood Court. You can see that the overall lot size is almost 119,000 square feet, but there is about a 26,000 square foot wetland on the site. So when we are doing our analysis for intensity, density, those kind of things, we're looking at the net square footage, which is 93,000 square feet or 2.14 acres. So you'll see those numbers as we move forward here. The previous application was on December 6th. It was for the PUD concept plan, and as Community Development Director Gellner stated, this is a PUD general plan. A PUD is actually a 3-step process. The concept and general plans are reviewed and given a recommendation by the Planning Commission. Ultimately, the City Council adopts it. There is a PUD final plan, which essentially is the building permit. It's an administrative review to make sure all the conditions are approved. We're now on the second of the 3-step process. Also on December 6th was a 4-foot 10-inch variance to the 35-foot maximum building height. So that makes the new maximum building height 39 feet 10 inches. And then there was the shore impact plan, CUP, for building height exceeding 35 feet. Any time in the shoreland district you are over 35 feet, you need a conditional use permit for that additional height. Those 3 were granted, but there were 4 conditions that were given by the City Council. First, to maintain 3 commercial condominiums on the ground level, but that the 4 other commercial condos shown at that time could be flex condos, generally to the west of the building. Second condition is the front setback is increased to 10 feet for the west residents on Lake Street. Third, that the city engineer's comments need to be addressed. And then fourth, that additional public space or other public benefit will be part of the overall plan. We'll go over details in this presentation, how the top 3 are addressed. I will turn it back over to Community Development Director Geldner to kind of address that 4th one at the end of the presentation. So attached or shown is the proposed site plan. Looks pretty similar to the concept plan in that we have a one building with essentially 2 cores, the west residence and the east residence. The area between the 2 is connected by this shared atrium. So as we move forward, we're talking about the west residence and the east residence. I'll go into more detail about it, but one change to highlight was in the original PUD concept plan, the west residence had a 6-foot setback from the property line to where that building began. It now has a 10-foot setback, which was the condition of concept plan approval. How that was accomplished is the west residence is 4 feet narrower. So essentially, the west residence north line stayed the same as before. The southern line along Lake Street moved 4 feet north. So the building itself is less wide. The proposal here, again, a single building looking like 2 separate 3-story buildings. There are 38 residential commercial condominium units, 3 commercial condominium units, and then 3 flex condominium units that would be allowed for either residential, commercial, or some sort of almost a live-work unit. The majority of the parking will be accommodated underground. You will see there's a driveway on the east side of this site, which happens to line up with the same location as the east drive to the current surface parking lot. But that instead will go underneath the building and access the underground parking. There is also a surface parking lot shown there just to the east of Edgewood Court. There's a shared courtyard in the center of the site, and then there is a shortened nature trail shown in beige. Previously, it had looped around the lake, the stormwater pond. Now, for various reasons, it is shortened kind of to a cul-de-sac, but that nature trail is only available to Ferndale Ridge residents and the Westway condominium residents. That is not a public open space. So I have 2 sheets of changes from the concept plan, and then we have some arrows there that kind of match the color of the text to help you show the location. But the front yard setback for the west residence was increased from 6 feet to 10 feet. The setback for the east residence stays the same at 9 feet. So the west residence increased the setback, the east residence stayed the same. The reduced nature path I had mentioned earlier, again, is available for the Ferndale Ridge residents and the Westway condo residents. One of the advantages of that is the impervious surface coverage actually has been lowered since the concept plan, mostly because of that loop trail. A lot of that trail's gone away and that impervious surface has been removed. This has increased the residential condominiums from 36 to 38. To describe how we increased 2, part of it's the next bullet. We have 3 flex condos and 3 commercial condos. Previously, in the concept plan, there was a proposal of up to 7 commercial condos. So now we're only talking about 6. The 1 commercial condo that was located at the northwest corner of the building, basically fronting Edgewood Court and the surface parking lot, that got converted into a residence. So that's 1 additional residence. On the second floor, they actually took and redesigned the units to gain 1 additional unit. So the 2 additional units are changing 1 from commercial to residential on the first floor, and then on the second floor, changing the size of the units to gain that second unit. For the commercial condos, those are located either in the east residence or in the west residence directly next to the shared atrium. The 3 flex condos are fronting Lake Street on the west residence, but they are located on the west side. And then finally, there was a change that the analysis of the wetland increased that height of the high water level. So the garage elevation did increase 0.3 feet, but the overall height stayed the same. So the roof is no taller than it was at the concept plan. For the second page of the changes, at the very top, that yellow arrow, there was a potential trail that went from the property to the north to the city parking lot. Would have taken a large boardwalk across the wetland. City wasn't interested in that, and that has been removed. There was comments by the city engineer about concerns about site triangles at both the entrance to the underground parking and at Edgewood Court. The applicant has shown that all the site triangle requirements have been met. There was discussion, which are the orange arrows, of enclosing that narrow part of the wetland into a pipe and essentially removing that wetland. That has been eliminated from analysis. The engineer has reviewed that and has supported that. And then there is a series of retaining walls that are being replaced on the east side of the east residence. Previously, they had been proposed to be maintained. Both the applicant took a look at the condition of those, as well as to maintain the wetland buffer required. They've chosen to remove those retaining walls and reconstruct them in a very similar location. So this is the elevation of both the buildings. We kind of tried to shade them to show the difference, but we have the atrium in the middle, which is a single-story atrium. We have the west building and the east building, so the west building would be to the left, east building to the right. One of the things I'd really want to point out is you can see that the windows to those commercial units on the east residence and that first one on the west residence is at sidewalk level. So that will increase that activity at the sidewalk. On the west residence, you see there, those windows are raised. So those 3 flex units are above the street level, only by, 3-4 feet, but those are raised above the street level compared to the 3 commercial condominiums. Many of these things have not changed, so I'll probably go through them pretty quickly. The biggest difference is the south elevation. That west residence has increased from 6 feet to 10 feet. All the other setbacks meet the code requirements. Building height, again, the garage floor raised in height, but we don't take the building height from the garage floor. We take the building height from the average grade plane up to the midpoint of the highest gabled roof. Not only does this stay the same as what was proposed at the concept plan at 39 feet 10 inches, the peak of the roof is the same height as the previous one. So the building is, in appearance and by building height measurements, the same as the concept plan approval back in December. And then at that table at the bottom shows a couple other nearby projects and what their heights were approved. So these are the 38 condominium or units, residential condominium units. You see that there is 10 residential units in the west building and 28 residential units in the east building. If you recall from the site plan, that east building is deeper and then has a little bit of almost a dog leg to the west. We have 15 of the 38 are 2-bedroom units, and then the remaining are 3-bedroom units. There are no 1-bedroom units proposed in this building. The residential density in the comprehensive plan and the R5 standards is between 20 and 29 units an acre. The proposed density here is 20.3. So it meets the density. It's a little increase from the concept plan, up from 19.7 to 20.3. And again, that's a total of 36 residential units. Open space. This is a little bit of a conversation, and this is very similar to what it was before. We're going to try to point out what has changed. So the area in red is the area that's available to the general public. It's both basically the sidewalk and impervious surface that's along Lake Street, and then leading up to the atrium, and then the sidewalk that leads from Edgewood Court into the shared courtyard, and that shared courtyard itself. Currently, it is almost 7,000 square feet, but it's up by more than 26% from the concept plan. The area that's available to the Ferndale Ridge residents and the Westwood condominium residents is that trail leading up to the stormwater pond. That's just about 1,200 square feet, down about 15% from the concept plan. Again, previously that looped all the way around the stormwater pond, so the decrease is it no longer loops. The area in yellow is areas that are available only to the residents. They're either that entrance off the shared courtyard or essentially patios for the adjacent residential units on the first floor. That's about 1,200 square feet. And then the areas in green, which are also either exclusively to the residents or patios or on the second or third story, is 11,500 square feet, and that's also up from the the concept plan. So overall, the open space is 20,783 square feet. That is actually down about 1,000 square feet, 1,200 square feet from the concept plan. Again, the majority of what has been decreased is due to removing that trail that loops around the stormwater pond. Next is the Shoreland Residential PUD CUP. And part of why we put this at this point in the agenda is the residential PUD CUP has two standards, density and then open space. The density, the way the shoreland ordinance is set up, you lay out density in tiers. That's kind of what's shown on the very right-hand side. That red area is the first tier. That doesn't even get to this building at site itself. So then the brown is the second tier, and kind of the tan is the third tier. That's where this building particularly falls. You are allowed to have more density, even a density above the comprehensive plan designation in the tier further from the lake. In this particular case, both the tiers are showed at a little over 21 dwelling units per acre. So both tiers meet the comprehensive plan density of between 20 and 30 dwelling units per acre. The second requirement is that there's more than 30% open space within the development. And the open spaces that we talked previously and the wetland on the site provides 39% of the site having open space. So that is in excess of what the shoreland requirement is. These are have changed very little since the concept plan, so I'll go through them pretty quickly, but what we're showing is that they are allowed to have, well, what they're proposing is that their overall lot coverage is 34.04%. Their concept plan was 33.4%. So that is essentially the same. PUD does not have a lot coverage standard, nor does the C4A. So you see a lot of the other nearby projects have much higher lot coverage than this building does. The C4A district, which is what we look at when we have a PUD, has a limit of no more than 2.0 floor area ratio. That's the FAR. This is proposed at 1.15, again, much less than a number of nearby projects. Regarding impervious surface, PUD district itself does not have a standard for impervious surface, but the Shoreland Overlay District, which this project is in, has a number of different standards. 25% impervious surface is allowed by right. Between 25% and 75% impervious surface requires an approval of stormwater management by the city engineer, and we'll go over their comments in a little bit. The impervious surface is proposed at 48.02%, which falls between that 25 and 75% requirement, and is actually a slight reduction from 51% previously. Again, the majority of that reduction is by removing that loop around the stormwater pond. Just to discuss the commercial uses, they are proposing 3 commercial condominiums, which includes one of the condominiums at 619 square feet being a coffee shop. And then the 3 flexible condominiums could be used as residential, commercial, or live-work units. The PUD zoning district itself does not require commercial uses. But as was shown in the condition of approval by the city council, that's still important along Lake Street frontage. Parking, we talked previously that the bottom exhibit is the underground parking stall or underground parking structure, and then we have the surface structure just off Edgewood Court. The parking requirement is 110 stalls. They are actually proposing 113. I would like to point out that there are 16 tandem stalls proposed in the underground garage. The applicant has committed that those would either be given to the same residential unit or the same commercial unit. So if you have the tandem stalls where, you know, the back one basically blocks the front one, it's going to be the same residential unit or the same commercial unit that has both. So there won't be a different owner that potentially could block another owner. Traffic, this is the same as the concept plan because as we discussed, the proposal is essentially the same. Average daily trips increased by 463, peak trips increased by 18, but the traffic study itself concludes that there are no significant impacts. The city engineer concurs with that study, and this also assumes that the property across the street, 200 Lake Street, develops by 2025 as well. So not only this development on its own doesn't create an impact, this development with a development similar to the intensity we looked at earlier this year, that together does not cause an impact. Finally, there's a lot of information here on the tree preservation. The thing I'd like to point out is that second line, 232 inches are needs to be the replacement, 322.75 inches are proposed to be replaced. I would state some of that tree replacement is occurring on the Ferndale Ridge side of the property. That is allowed by our recently revised city code, so that does comply. The only thing we would point out is there's a couple of additional measures that the applicant will need to take care of, and as proposed, we would expect that those would occur with that third step, that planned unit development final stage. But the 3 requirements are they need to give additional information on the critical root zone, that all the critical root zones are protected, and that there's protections for heritage and significant trees that need to be conducted per the city code. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Community Development Director Geldner.
Thank you. The public hearing notice for this evening was published in the Sun Sailor in late July, and then a notice was sent to the DNR since this is in the Shoreland Overlay District. And then a notice was mailed to all property owners and renters within 750 feet of the property. We did not receive any public comment letters on this proposal, neither today or over the weekend or in the packet. There was a neighborhood meeting that was hosted by the applicant, and they hosted a neighborhood meeting back with a concept plan as well. There were 13 people in attendance, and they discussed the following topics: tree removal, wetland impacts, the floor plans, a number of contractors during construction timeline, maintenance plans for the site, setbacks, parking, traffic, and commercial uses. And the applicant can speak more to the answers that they had for the public at the time. Our city engineer commented that a utility analysis for this site was prepared by Stantec and there were no concerns, that the average grade change in the lot is 0.68 feet, which is well below our 2-foot threshold that would require the approval of city council, that the delineation of the wetland was approved in 2021 and that is still valid, and that the applicant has requested that the stormwater pond on the northwest corner of the site be removed from the wetland delineation because it was constructed with the original project, and staff will work with Stantec to determine if this is an acceptable solution. So we have many questions to consider in these requests. They are also listed in your packet on page 30 of 144, and they can be really helpful for guiding your discussion this evening. The really big questions that I encourage you to start with this evening are about the PUD general plan and whether this PUD is encouraging innovations in development, higher standards of site and building design than we would typically see, creative use of the land, a development pattern that's in harmony with our comprehensive plan, and this PUD creating a more desirable and creative environment that might not be possible through our typical regulations. After moving through the purpose statements, I encourage you to work on the PUD general standards, whether this proposed PUD has any detrimental effects upon the health, safety, and welfare of residents, if it's consistent with our comprehensive plan, if it has adequate common open space and meets landscaping standards, and has adequate architectural characteristics. And then also the conditions of approval that were part of the PUD concept plan when approved by the city council in December. First, does it have the eastern 3 condominiums being preserved exclusively for commercial uses? Are we seeing that front setback increase to 10 feet on the west residences? Have they addressed all the city engineer's comments? And have they explored additional public space or other public benefits as part of the overall site plan? Just a couple more slides here on criteria to keep in mind. And again, this continues after page 30 of 144 as well. And do the dwelling units have any negative effect on the health, safety, and welfare? Are the dwelling units, thinking about them as their proximity to Lake Minnetonka? Is this consistent with our comprehensive plan? Is the open space controlled by a landlord or by a property owners association? Do the dwelling units have any density variations? Do the buildings have any deviations from our height standards? We know that they do from that previous variance. Will the preservation and maintenance in perpetuity of open spaces, will that be in perpetuity? Will at least 30% of the development area be proposed as open space? We know that it is. Is the open space on land covered by road surfaces and parking areas and structures? And then lastly is our rezoning questions. At first, does this rezoning to the PUD district, does that comply with the policies of the comprehensive plan? Does it conform to present and future land uses in this area? Does it conform to all performance standards for parking and loading and noise, other things that impact the neighborhood? Does the rezoning have a negative effect on the area? And then finally, are the surrounding streets capable of serving the traffic generation from the rezoning? So it's a lot of questions, but we're happy to walk through those with you as needed in the discussion portion of the evening. So next, we'd love to take any clarifying questions that the commission has for us. The applicant has prepared a presentation this evening. And then, of course, you can ask any questions of the applicant that you'd like to with the direction of the chair. And then we'd like to hold a public hearing this evening and then hold discussion and deliberation. So thank you, Chair. I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Director Gellner and Planners Weber. Commissioners, do we have any questions for clarification at this time for staff? Yeah?
And staff, if this is more to the applicant, let me know. But those 3 flex condos that they were talking about, is that something that they have to identify, or do we need to require them to say that these are going to always be commercial, or they could all 3 be residential, or some could be 2 in 1? How should we be thinking about those?
So for the 3 flex spaces, I recommend that you think about them being flexible in perpetuity, meaning that if market conditions change, they could change. I would ask the applicant to elaborate on whether they have a prediction, whether they would really change uses very often, back and forth between residential and commercial, because tenant build out tends to be very expensive. So I imagine that we would be with those original tenants for several years. But in our entitlement process, they would be considered flexible in perpetuity.
Okay, thank you.
Can we go back to the elevation slide you had of the, from Lake Street looking at the building?
This one, correct? Is that right?
I only see me on my screen.
See if this works.
There it is.
Oh,
Perfect.
great.
Yeah, so just for clarity, so I can get my head around which is the retail in this image. I see the proposed coffee shop as the atrium pass-through, sort of center right on the screen. And where are the retail is to the left of that? The non-flex retail.
Yep. So we have kind of the brown atrium in the middle. And then you'll see that I'm going to start going to the left, to the west residence.
Okay.
You see directly adjacent to the atrium, the windows are at sidewalk level. They have some transom windows above it. And then as you move west, first you have a staircase that would lead you up with a little bit of a pediment above it. And then you see the next three sets of windows are about 4 feet above that first set of windows. So the set of windows that are along the sidewalk is the third commercial unit.
Designated.
Yep. The three sets of windows that are to the west that are raised above the sidewalk level, those are the three flex units. If we go to the east, you see there is kind of two double sets of windows, and then kind of looks like a large atrium that's an architectural feature, and then beyond. The first two sets of windows would be the coffee shop, but most of the coffee shop would face kind of west towards the
Turning the corner.
area inside the atrium. The other sets of windows is that larger, either first or third commercial unit, depending on how you're numbering. But so, surrounding the atrium, the entire first floor of the east residence is the two commercial units. The first set of windows in the west unit that are at sidewalk level is the third commercial unit. Does that help?
I think so, yeah. Did you have a question following up on that?
Yeah.
Please.
I'd like to follow up on that, because on the front page 13, you say 38 residential, 3 commercial, and 3 flex. But when you actually look at it, it's really 7 units. If you count the coffee shop, it's listed as a condo.
The coffee shop is one of the 3 commercial units.
Right. And then there's the 3 flex, but where do you put the residential?
The residential, when we had 7 units during the concept plan, it was not on the Lake Street foundation, the Lake Street facade.
Facade.
That 7th unit was on the north facade facing both the Ferndale Ridge and Edgewood Court, as well as that north surface parking lot. So the 7th unit we were looking at previously was on the north side of that west residence. It didn't front Lake Street. Now they're only keeping the 6 units that front Lake Street as either the 3 commercial or the 3 flex.
But then the residential faces Edgewood.
Yep.
So, this is confusing. Why isn't that shown on the list of the development?
It is. It's one of the 38 residences.
Oh, okay.
Because if you remember, there was 36 previously.
Yep.
The one
Got it.
switched, and then the one on the second floor got added.
Where were you when I was studying this all week? Trying to figure this out.
Yep. So
Dr.
it's
Cannon went,
it's
"I
all
can't."
in the difference between the 36 residences in the comp plan.
Right, got it.
Or
Okay.
concept plan and the 38 now.
Then, when you showed the open space plan, could you pull up that picture again? You talked about the open space being in red.
Yes.
Where, okay, so the bottom across is Lake Street.
Yep.
Currently, there's a sidewalk from Lake Street to Edgewood Court. Why is that not in red? is there still a sidewalk there in front of those units?
Because that's in the public right-of-way. We are only
Okay.
showing what is on their property, not the public right-of-way.
Okay, so that's still there.
Yep.
Okay. And then one last thing, on page 94, I believe, the amenity plan. Our applicant has been extremely helpful in talking to the HOA and the residents. He talks about the signage for Ferndale Ridge to expand the size of that along with the residents there, and expanding that existing arborvitae hedge. Because it's in this drawing, does that mean that it's guaranteed to happen, or does it have to be someplace in the text?
These plans will be incorporated in the development agreement, should this be approved by the concept, or by the city council.
So, okay,
And that development agreement becomes the regulations.
all of this, okay.
In addition, as I kind of mentioned, the revised tree preservation ordinance allows landscaping on adjacent properties, so that fits with that as well.
Thank you.
Okay, good questions. Yes, Commissioner Schwalbe?
Can you please bring back the page that has the stormwater pond and that shows the path that is going to be going around the common areas in the back?
Does that?
Does this work well?
Yeah, that'll work. Okay, so the blue area, this is the pond.
It is a reconstructed pond. So it is a pond. It's different in shape and in volume than what's currently there. That occurs to accommodate the stormwater necessary for this revised development. So there's a stormwater there now. It's a little thinner and a little longer. It's now going to be the shape shown on this.
So it will actually have a greater capacity to hold water? This one will?
Yes.
Okay. So the walking path, where is it now compared to where it was going to be before in the concept plan?
In the concept plan, coming up off of the shared parking, there to the south, and along the east side of the stormwater pond, that is the same. What was on the concept plan is it continued north, and then along the north side of the pond and the west side of the pond to loop. Now, not the only reason, but one of the reasons it changed was that did not provide the adequate width for the wetland buffer that is required. That is that area of dark green to the east. There needs to be a minimum distance between that and, that needs to be natural, can't be impervious. So the trail that would have looped all the way around the lake or around the stormwater pond would have required some sort of a deviation from those wetland standards. So both from reaction that, mixed reaction of that trail at the concept plan and evaluating both the stormwater needs and the wetland buffer needs, that's why the applicant has proposed this cul-de-sac on the trail instead of the loop all the way around previously.
And you've seen their proposal and you agree with that? That the path couldn't coexist around there with the wetlands and the...
In light of both the applicant at the concept plan and the city council, both understood that this wasn't going to be public accessible space. It was only going to be accessible to Ferndale Ridge and the condominiums. There's not really a great public value there. So having some space for the Ferndale Ridge and Westwood condominiums is a benefit to both those parties, but wasn't benefiting the city as a whole. So the balance of getting the right wetland buffer, getting a slightly less impervious surface coverage, Staff is supportive of the trail as proposed.
Okay, there was another spot at which you talked about that the trail that would lead to, from the neighboring properties to the trail was no longer going to be there.
In this exhibit, the very top, there's a yellow arrow. In the concept plan, between the development to the north, which is up the bluff quite a bit, there was a trail potential from that development to the north to the city-owned parking lot to the east. That trail was never going to connect to the open spaces in this development. It was going to have the potential to connect the city-owned parking lot, and then from there onto Lake Street, and that development to the north.
The
But it was
city-owned
never-
parking lot, where, is that on here?
Yeah, it's the outline that essentially is that northern orange arrow. You see how the dark green wetland, and then all of a sudden there's a line and a white space. That white space is the city-owned parking lot. But part of that trail would have been a boardwalk over that entire dark green area. And so both the cost and the potential environmental mitigation that would be needed for that boardwalk, it wasn't a public value that was helping this development itself.
Because I thought I read somewhere that it said that they discontinued to pursue that trail because the neighboring property owners were not interested in having access to it.
When the applicant gives their presentation, they can give you more information on
Okay. Let me see. Have we had experience in the city with other tandem parking stalls?
it. Yes, and in most cases, in underground parking structures.
Okay, and they seem to be successful?
When you have a single ownership, yes. We're very concerned when the tandem stalls would be used by multiple ownerships.
Right. But they're suggesting they will only do that, one unit would have to share that tandem parking spot.
That's correct.
Okay. And one more last thing about the stormwater?
Yeah. If I may, one other thing I'd point out is,
Okay.
we actually have tandem stalls in the city-owned parking lot as well. But they happen to be all parking areas that are within an easement for the boat works. So that's
what?
for the boat works.
Oh, okay.
So that's another example where there are tandem stalls, but again, it's dedicated to one ownership. The boat works businesses use it through a valet service. The valet comes and
Okay.
parks in those areas. So we have tandem stalls that work when it's programmed by a single owner.
And should I also wait and ask the client what their reasoning is for wanting to remove the wetland delineation from the stormwater pond? Or do you?
I'm comfortable addressing that. It's a very technical finding that needs to happen, but part of so there's a environmental evaluation of, are there wetland plants, is there hydric soil? The wetland expert went out there, and the stormwater pond has wetland-type plants, it's hydric. But there is an exception to the Wetland Conservation Act that if that was a man-made water body, it's not a wetland, it's not natural. So that existing stormwater pond was created with the existing development there today. So it appears they would meet that exemption. As the city engineer stated, there's a process to do that. The city's wetland consultant is Stantec. The developer will have to work with the city's wetland impact to get that to occur. But it's an exemption we're aware of and we think applies in this case.
Okay, because it's not a natural pond.
Correct. It was created for the development of the existing site, the existing 33,000 square foot building and that associated.
Before this development.
The one that's asked to be removed and replaced with this one, yep.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you for that detail. And good questions. Does anyone have any further questions of staff at this time? Otherwise, I'd like to turn it over to the applicant to come forward and address the commission. Please state your name and address for the record and your role, if you're an advisor or other part of the applicant's team. And if you can keep it to 10 minutes or so, that'd be wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Stockton and the Planning Commission members. I'd like to thank Lowell and Zissoff family for allowing me the opportunity to present the Westway condominium project tonight. My name's Darren Schmidt. I'm with Bruce Schmidt and Associates. We're an architectural firm. We're located at 320 Manitoba Avenue South in Wayzata. We've been in Wayzata for 36 years, completed many projects in the city of Wayzata. The project has been modified since we went through concept approval based on all of the feedback we've had, including the city council. So as we go through, I'll point out some of what we've changed. And I guess I can answer questions at the end to deal with whatever we need to do. So, Jay, this is the project viewed from the west side of the existing 200 Lake building. Very similar to what you saw in concept approval. We still have pitched roofs with dormers, wood shingle, charming idea. What has changed on this plan probably the most is we have a little over 4 feet extra room along the sidewalk. So we have additional landscaping. We've actually had enough room then to create a seating area on the corner of Edgewood Court and Lake Street that's open to the public. This is looking at the project from the east side of the 200 building, kind of showing the differences between the two structures. The idea is to break up the mass by having it appear to be 2 separate buildings. A close-up again of some of the commercial areas. So as the questions were asked about the shared atrium, that's where you see the Westway sign on the right perspective there. That is the building's main entrance off of Lake Street. So you come in the door at sidewalk level, but this is also a good plan to show the commercials. So as you can see in the left picture where those awnings, the dark colored awnings are over that is the commercial space. So basically the awning defines as well as taller windows and things like that. So I mean, that is the commercial unit number 3. So the idea is that the 3 easterly commercial spaces would be retail, more intense uses. They're at sidewalk level. Let's go to the next one, Jay. Where as opposed to, as you go farther down in the west residences, you can see that the flex units are above the sidewalk level. There's stairs that go up to them, but all 3 commercial units, all 3 flex units, all have access to Lake Street sidewalk. That was important to us. In the left picture there, you can see the stairs there. That would serve the 1 residential unit off of Edgewood Court. We kind of took from the feedback we had going through concept approval that to minimize commotion on Edgewood Court would be good. So that's what we've decided. That back unit would be residential. The other 3 flex units, they will be sold. So at this point, I can't tell you what's going to move in there, but the idea would be less intense uses, probably a service commercial to office kind of use. I don't envision that once they would be built as something that they would probably change because the people would own those units. So doesn't mean they couldn't, but it would be, it's not like we're going to have, it's not a tenant situation, it's an owner at that point. So we anticipate them probably being commercial though. Somebody, to have their front door on Lake Street would be a big deal. So next slide, please. Neighborhood map. Eric's kind of shown you this one already. The biggest thing I can probably point out is that 102 of our 113 cars will come off of Lake Street, not Edgewood Court. So we have 11 cars on the surface parking lot at on Edgewood Court. The idea is guests and customers would have a spot there. I'll talk about that in a little more in a second. Next slide, please. A little bit bigger view here. Similar comments. The idea is that those 11 cars in the back can access the back side of the shared atrium and access the commercial units. So the intent is that guests and customers would still park in those cars. There is 7 cars on street as well as in front of the building that could be used. Next slide, please. This is the 102 stall underground parking garage. As you can see, it comes in off of Lake Street. The white areas you see are areas that are too short underneath the retail units to have space there. So, I mean, those would really be about 3.5 feet, 4 feet tall. So those areas just won't be excavated. Whereas under the flex units to the left side of that page along Lake Street, those would they're raised up, so now we can get parking underneath them. Here's a close-up of the corner of the streetscape at Edgewood Court and Lake Street. Here you can see that the yellow area is the traffic visibility triangle that's required by the city of Wayzata. Trees can be within that area, just not other structures or landscaping like shrubbery or things like that. So a tree, obviously, the trunk's narrower, so they allow that to be in there. There's also that public patio I talked about there on the corner that by moving the building back, we created space to add that. And then you can see the brown are some of the entrances for the flex units. Next slide. This is the corner, well, it's actually the driveway into the underground garage and Lake Street. Again, we're showing the traffic visibility triangles in yellow. And you can also see the public patio area next to what would be the coffee shop area there, kind of on the left side of that sheet. This is a blown up drawing showing the 11 cars behind the west residences. Like I said, again, those would be guests and customers would be the intent. We also have 3 delivery locations at that area. And again, the customers will be able to go through that shared terrace and access the atrium to get to the commercial units from those stalls. This is the first floor plan. I'll point out the 3 commercial units on the east side are a little bit darker colored tan, whereas the 3 flex units on the west part of the Lake Street frontage there are a little lighter tan, and then the residential unit towards the back. This is a second floor plan to merely show that once we get to second floor, we are above the shared atrium at that point. No one will think it's the same building at that point. It's basically, they're separated at that point. Third floor plan, very similar, 2 separate buildings. This plan's a good one to show that we have significant third floor setbacks. Actually, I think 15 feet along Lake Street with the west residences to meet the city's requirements. As you can also notice the dormers and things that on the west residences to create that charming look. Another thing I would point out is we have 3 recessed mechanical areas where we're recessing equipment down from the roof to third floor level to conceal. I don't think anybody could see them anyways, but to make sure that they're not where people could see them. So they're down at third floor level at that point. Roof plan, you can again see those 3 sunken, recessed mechanical areas, as well as our 3 elevator penthouses, and then the pitched roofs with the dormers and things on the west residences. South elevation, Eric's hit on this a little bit. Again, the kind of split between the commercial and the flex units is the left side of that black awning over the first floor windows. This is a west elevation of the west residences. So this is Edgewood Court frontage. That entrance you see there would actually be for a residential unit. These were massing drawings that we did the first time to show the Basically compare the existing building in red to the proposed building. This is the same concept for the Edgewood Court facade. This is our landscape plan, and really biggest thing to point out is that we are furnishing quite a bit of landscaping beyond what is required, and proposing to, as part of this project, it would extend to Ferndale Ridge as shown. This is our stormwater piping and wetland buffer plan. So really what I want to point out here is, as part of the revision, when we went to general concept here, as you can see, along the east side of the building is orange, and then the whole north end of the property is orange. So that orange area is about 19,000 square feet of property, so a little less than half an acre. That is the wetland buffer area. So the intent is that when this project is done, that will be replanted with native grasses and things, and there'll be signs there that we're not supposed to go back there. So all those areas will basically be not for people anymore at that point. So, this is the amenity plan. I can answer any questions that would have, but all of the work that is shown on here is proposed to be done as part of this project. So we wouldn't just go in there and do this work, though. The intent is that we would bring a landscape architect in to talk to Ferndale Ridge and I guess make sure this is, they don't have a different idea or whatever. But I mean, this is what we've included in the project for that. And that's the short and sweet. So if anybody has any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Schmidt. Does anybody have any questions for our applicant?
Thank you for going through everything. I have a few questions. You talked about that surface parking lot. You said that was mostly intended for your commercial buildings. Is that?
No, it would be guests and customers, whether they come to see somebody in a condominium or somebody in a commercial unit. So it'd be, those 11 stalls would be for guests and customers of all condominium units, so.
Okay. And then is that then, that looks like that's a flat surface to get into the atrium and then into the rest of the building? So, because it looks like on the front you have a few commercial that would be stairs. So how would your accessible visitors get into those?
There's, so basically the sidewalk level's like a split entry. So you come in partway between the parking garage level and first floor. But when you come in there, you have access to an elevator inside that. There's also, when you come in from the back, the shared terrace is level with the first floor. So you can access the same elevator from that side. So there's stairs and elevators for anybody coming in either side of the shared terrace to use. So.
And then on the first floor, the residential and the commercial, is it the same entrance? So if I have a residence on the first floor, am I using the same entrance as the commercial spaces?
Yes.
Right, so.
Yes. Well, the two buildings are actually separated. So if you have a condominium in the east residences, no commercial shares your entrance. It would only be that one entrance on the north side of the west residences would be shared by commercial. And it'd be the flex units, though. It'd be the 3 flex units.
Got it. And then all of those, then, even the ones that you said on Edgewood that had an exterior that would be a flex unit, they also have access to the
Correct.
interior, so,
They would be able to use the parking and they would all have stalls in the parking garage. They would be able to use that same entrance. On the north side of the building, they can come in either side of the shared atrium and, use stairs and elevator to get to those people as well, so.
all right, I think that was my questions, thank you.
Thank you. I have a question. In this actual drawing that was just there, you show tabletops, yellow tabletops around? The drawing that was just present on the screen. Yeah, there you go.
Correct, yes,
Yeah.
there's tables outside there,
Yeah.
yes.
Of those, which are not public access,
They're all public.
including the back on the interior courtyard?
The five or six tables we show on the blue area in front are public, And then the shared area in the back in brown, with the exception of the private terraces, is also public.
Okay, so which of those are private those 3 terraces there are private?
It would be those small enclosed ones
Okay.
right off of the terrace, but otherwise, the rest of that area back there is public, so.
Perfect, thank you. Any other questions? Yeah.
So on a similar note, it's public space, but how do you envision that being used? Is it like, it'll be access to the atrium, but I mean, is it inviting space for the general public to be, or how do you anticipate that space being utilized?
Yeah, I mean, the intent is if, somebody wants to come up and sit at a table, that's fine. I mean, it's public space, so I mean, it's not dedicated to the commercial units or the residential, so.
Yeah, it's kind of hidden in back is all, so it's.
Yeah, I
The
mean,
general public,
those people would, the 11 people parking back there would be walking through it to get
Yeah.
to the commercial spaces, so I mean,
okay. How long do you anticipate construction to take?
I believe 2 years, yep.
I just wanted to, I'm sorry. Thank you for your questions, your tenants. Mine is Lowell Zitzloff, 319 Berry. But the public use for that, Ferndale Ridge residents, those ladies meet every Thursday. I'm driving into Ferndale Ridge, and here's a bunch of chairs where they're in the street, and I stopped, I said, do you ladies have permission to block the street like this? We had a conversation for an hour, it was wonderful. But every Thursday, and they have a gazebo that's not the right size. We've had a wonderful time meeting with them. But I think Thursday nights, that place will be all Ferndale Ridge people and anybody else from the coffee shop or want to meet people. It should be the social area for the west end of Lake Street from everybody I've talked to.
Thank you.
And we're furnishing the buffer for the pond that no one else has done back here. We're also furnishing the holding pond. And they want 30 feet average from the land of buffer. That's thousands of square feet that we've taken property and made that happen to protect the sparkling blue waters. I've been in Wayzata for 90 years. And so I know what it means to, even they had to have I tell you the story, when I was in high school, Wayzata was undefeated in football, and they all knew my girlfriend was from Mound. I lost my wife after 68 years of marriage and 2 years of going together. But the coach, Bud Crowningshield, and all the players had to have a play where I had to carry the ball against Mound because they knew it was my girlfriend's team. Anyway, they changed the play on Thursday night. I wasn't even at the practice. Instead of end around, which I played right in, they made it up the middle. You could have drove a freight train through, and we beat them 21-0. So a lot of memories in sports. And Ray, my brother, was captain of Wayzata's basketball team the last time you were state champions here. And that was 1959 and 60. And we were just state champions again. So we've got a lot going on from family, Five Swans business, and being in Wayzata for years. It's a wonderful place where everybody wants to be. So thank you for all your comments and concerns, because it's from you people that make the thing wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a commissioner with a question?
I think you can still carry that football through that line, but
I've had some ill problem, not COVID, but my body kind of went dead from the waist down. I'm working on getting it back. I told the doctor, well, I'll be 90 in 1 year, and then I'm going to get serious about my physical strength. But
okay.
I still enjoy all the Wayzatas and all the things that we have here, so.
Yeah.
And there's less than 1% vacant land in Wayzata. I've got another project coming, and I try to do the condominiums where people are going to be here 11 to 12 months, not 5.5. We're getting close to 40% absentee voters. If you own a business like we do, Five Swans, you like your residents here 11 to 12 months. And so that's what I'm trying to do with this project, Make them attainable, I call it. So, but anyway, thank you.
Yeah. So the reason I ask about how long construction would take is because I know there's, I think, 26 residents back in the Edgewood Court area, and it's a one-way in and out for both, I think, cars and pedestrian access. They have a sidewalk there. And are they concerned about how that's going to be maintained during construction? Not only accessible, but kept clean and, as friendly an environment as possible while you're building.
Yeah, no, we would anticipate that for Edgewood Court would be open the whole time. It may take that we have to move the sidewalk, with Jersey barriers and fencing, out into where the street is currently to do that. But I mean, we've had, through concept approval, I mean, we'd looked at working with Opus and a few of that. So I mean, the biggest thing for us is getting the right contractor as part of the project that can basically be a good babysitter at the same time. So, but that would be, no, the goal would be is to have street and sidewalk access through there, so.
Yeah, and you're just making that a priority would be important.
Correct, yep.
We're taking 130 cars off of Edgewater Drive that currently go in there. That's down to 11. And I talked to the residents regarding so that we don't block the entrance to their place. Giving them more signage, and buffer. We've had two separate special meetings.
No, it'll be a priority to, we've tried very hard through this whole process to accommodate Edgewood Court the best we can, and that
Mr.
would be
Schmidt?
a priority.
Would you just repeat those comments so that everybody can hear it?
Sure, I think Lowell was pointing out that currently approximately 120 cars use Edgewood Court, or it did before the tenant moved out, but, and then we're down to 11 with the current plans. So, I mean, there should be a greatly reduced amount of traffic on Edgewood Court with this project than current 33,000-foot office building, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, Commissioner Schwalbe.
I'd like to get back to the nature path for just a moment. I really loved that idea from your original concept. So now it's quite a bit smaller. So how much smaller is it from your original plan?
I guess I don't know square footage wise. I mean, before it actually completely.
Like if it was a quarter of a mile before,
I
could it
would
have
guess
been that
half.
big? It actually could have been that big, couldn't it?
No, I would guess we probably about half of what it was currently.
Okay.
Ferndale Ridge seemed to be concerned with potential activity back there. We had the city council concerned with removing a bunch of trees to do it. And then we had to provide the 19,000 square feet of buffer as well. So, I mean, we kind of got to the point where we still want a path to go back there. We still need a path to go back there because we do have to maintain that holding pond that's back there. So, I mean, there will be times when somebody will have to go back there and do that. I don't envision a lot, but then the rest of that whole area is just left in a natural state. So, I mean, none of the other residential neighbors have to worry about people back there, I guess.
Okay, I understand that.
Residents didn't want the pond open to the public who went to their property.
Okay.
That was one of the main reasons we discontinued it, because I met with residents of I talking to dogs pooping in their yard off in Ferndale. The neighbor residents is very specific about what they want.
Yeah.
Thank you, that's good information. Would you please repeat it? Thanks.
Yes. So basically, public input that we had from the neighbors were that they would prefer that we left the northern part of the property in as much of existing state as it is and not use it any more than we need. Lowell was commenting that Ferndale Ridge has had some issues with people cutting through, walking their dogs through their neighborhood and stuff like that. So they really didn't want the, originally, we probably would have let the general public back there, but Ferndale Ridge didn't want that. So that's why we have kind of minimized the activities, basically, that are going to happen back there.
Okay. Thank you, I appreciate that. Thanks.
All right. Any further questions for the applicant? If not, I'd like to go ahead. Thank you very much for your presentation. Appreciate it. We appreciate it. We'd like to turn now to the public hearing. Before we do, I'd like to read a few comments. Firstly, the public hearing is a time for us to listen to you, our community, about the approval requests we're considering. It's an important part of our official process that allows the public to participate. Any questions asked during the public hearing will be held until the end of the hearing and may be addressed by staff at that point. With that said, I'd now like to open the public hearing on the consideration of planned unit development PUD general plan, shoreline residential planned unit development, conditional use permit, PUD CUP, and zoning map amendment rezoning for Westway those at 201 Lake Street East. Okay, if you wish to speak, please come forward to the podium. State your name and address for the record and let us know if you're connected to the applicant in any way.
I will do that. I'm David Carland, and I'm 130 Edgewood Court, and I am on the board of Ferndale Ridge. And I think Commissioner Sorensen and Commissioner Douglas both beat me to the punch, making the 2 points on what we consider to be ongoing work. And the first one is and I should point out that we've been very pleased with our interaction with the applicant and appreciate the opportunity the city's given us to date to have input on the project. So going forward, we're concerned and we're looking forward to working with the applicant on some kind of a construction mitigation plan, particularly the ability to get in and out of that cul-de-sac during construction. And Commissioner Douglas pointed out that the group's been generous enough to offer us an enhanced buffer and to give us some of their trees. And we're looking forward to working with them to properly locate that, and just want to make sure nobody forgets about that commitment. And then I just think the final comment was that we weren't so much against that walkway. We were just mostly interested in maintaining as large a buffer as we could. And frankly, we just, given all that, I have a dog, and I'm telling you, there's so many great places to walk a dog in Wayzata. We didn't really see the utility of having a little kind of contrived loop behind us, I guess, was our viewpoint on that. So those are my comments, and thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here this evening that would like to speak? Okay, Director Gellner, do we have anybody on Zoom?
We do not, Chair.
Okay, if that's it, if there's not anyone else, I'll go ahead and close the public meeting. Right. Do we have, I guess it's now our time to sort of think through all these complex parts. Why don't we start our thoughts, as suggested, on the rezone PUD general plan? If anyone has any initial thoughts or reactions.
Yes, first I'd like to thank the architecture firm and the developer and the family. They've done an outstanding job, I think, meeting some of the requests of the city council and have accommodated all of the concerns. It's a lovely project, and I'm excited by it, so no further comments.
Thank you.
Can you direct us to what page, again, in our packet, all of these questions?
Page 30?
Yes, page 30 of 144 includes this criteria. We started the criteria with the PUD general plan purpose, then we move into PUD general standards and conditions, then down to shoreland residential, and then finally the rezoning. I think you could talk about rezoning first if you'd like to, Chair. It's up to you.
Yeah, I apologize. I don't have the page 30 because I couldn't download it onto my laptop. On my. Oh, thank you.
I'll comment. In looking at the purpose of the PUD, I felt that it encouraged innovations in the development for all styles of economic expansion. I like it. It's mixed use. And also, it's in harmony with the objectives of our comprehensive plan of Wayzata.
Agreed. Any further comment?
No, I think,
Commissioner-
go ahead, sorry. Nope.
Commissioner Sorensen?
I think-
Go ahead.
I just say I think PUD makes sense for this development, so I'm comfortable with it.
Yeah, well, so we're at stage 2 here, going through the general plan. And I think a big part of that is just ensuring that what was included in the concept plan is still valid and within the project, including the additional conditions that the city council set forth. And it appears to me like the applicant's done a good job incorporating those items. I think we have almost 10 pages of criteria that we were given in our packet to look at and consider. So without going through a lot of them, I think I agree with Commissioner Douglas and agree generally that I think the criteria have been met on all 3 items on the PUD general plan, on the shoreland, PUD, CUP as pertains to density and open space, and the rezoning criteria also. So I think you've done a good job of responding and be supportive of this application.
Commissioner Schwalbe?
Well, it seems to me that the considerations that we had previously during the concept plan portion have been addressed, that you've taken every one of them, looked at them, made the proper adjustments, and I commend you for that. And I'm quite excited about this project. I think it's going to be gorgeous. I'm very happy that you're building this in that site. It looks very good to me. Thank you.
Any further thoughts? We have on page 39 as well, considering the possible adverse effects.
Regarding the rezoning, point 6, I like the traffic generation use in relation to the capabilities of our streets. I like that there's a decrease in the traffic coming in Edgewood Court, that it's shifted more to the commercial area of the city, and a lot of the mass of the building is also shifted, so it's a nice transition into our residential multifamily area.
Yeah, I agree with that. I also like how the setback adds to the sidewalk and
Yeah.
the tables. It's a really nice idea that those tables are public access there, and the raised ones as well. I'm curious to see how that actually acts in reality. But from what I can imagine, it seems like quite a nice addition. And I really like the parking diverted from Edgewood. That's great. Any more thoughts? Sounds like we're pretty clear on that first point, so we can look at sort of the shoreland PUD, CUP. And our thoughts there. It seemed pretty straightforward, where we met the density and we met the open space. So,
Chair, I did,
Yes.
if you're getting to the end of your deliberation, I did highlight 4 potential conditions based
Oh,
on
yes.
questions, but it's up to you if you think they're appropriate to be conditions or not. I can go through those now
That
if
would be
it's
great.
appropriate timing. The first was just to require that tandem spaces are used by the same ownership entity. It sounds like that is important to the commission potentially. I could maybe pause and just hear if there's consensus there.
yeah.
Okay, so tandem spaces by the same ownership entity would be first. A second option would be that the amenities that are listed on page 94, while they'll be incorporated into this plan set, it may be helpful for staff and administration to see that as an express condition, that those amenities are included in this project. Just sometimes when we're working with really large plan sets, we may miss a comment in a little bubble comment like that on a site plan, so I'd prefer to have it be expressly listed if you're open to that. It sounds like these amenities are important to your recommendation tonight.
Yes, I'd agree with that.
The third is that I would recommend that we record easements over the areas that are dedicating public access, as shown on the open space plan. So easements are just a way for us to make sure that there's public access provided. And that would be on the open space plan, that would be the red locations. Can just point those out again. And maybe what I would suggest for the wording of this is that in a form acceptable to the city attorney, that way we can work through that administratively, but in general, we like to require easements for open space that's publicly accessible. Sound good? And then the fourth and final one is to require a construction management plan with a focus on site access at Edgewood Court.
What page are you looking at? I'm not,
This is from my head. Oh. Just taking notes during the discussion, trying to highlight some things I was recognizing as important to this group. Construction management plan usually lists like how the applicant plans to notify neighbors of construction activity and trucking routes and times of day of working, things like that.
and those are typical?
For big projects, they are typical, yes, but I do like to have that incorporated into this process since it's not a code requirement.
So those would be like the 4 conditions for item number, for the first, for the general plan PUD.
Yeah, I would say they're honestly just conditions for your entire recommendation. If it sounds like you're moving towards a recommendation of
Yeah.
approval for all of them, so these are just conditions for the whole.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense, because we talked about the construction, the easements for open space, amenities. Does that include like the coffee shop, like as an amenity, or no?
I would say I'm focused more on page 94 specifically, which is about amenities that are, and I can pull that up, that are specifically, really geared toward the neighbors right at Ferndale Ridge.
Oh, I see, okay.
Yeah, and so maybe that would just give the applicant a little room to have a final meeting with neighbors as they had proposed to work out final details, but just that in essence, these.
Okay, so you're talking, okay. And then the tandem parking spaces, that makes perfect sense,
Yes.
being one owner.
Quick question about the parking spaces, since we're pointing out the tandem ones. Are all units assigned a private personal parking space?
That is the applicant's intention. So do you think, Eric, any more to say there?
In addition, the code requires 2 parking stalls per unit, so the 2 tandem stalls make sense. Each of the flex units would require at least 2 stalls if it was a residential, but if it was commercial, it would be more than that. So it really does match up with what the code requirement is per unit, so
Okay.
it fits well.
Yep, good.
There was 4 items that were pointed out to us, the public benefit, the setback, which is there, and the 3 commercial condos, commercial units versus the flex ones. Do we need to, is it guaranteed that those will be commercial, or is it, that's firm? Those 3 commercial ones that are on that section by the black awning and to the right?
Yes, I would want to make sure we have that solidified with our city attorney, but yes, that's the intention on all of the floor plans show that those are clearly the commercial spaces. So how I would handle that long-term is just that I think this would work to just allow any commercial use that's allowed in the C4A district into those spaces, as long as they meet parking requirements and, loading standards and such.
Okay, because originally when I was sort of looking at this before coming to tonight's meeting, I was concerned about the stair access to the flexible spaces and felt that it was sort of, I don't know, I wasn't sort of convinced that there would be it would feel commercial with a stairway leading to it. But in seeing everything kind of coming together and the dedicated space that does feel like it's very accessible at ground level, it makes a lot more sense to me, but I would want to feel confident that we are getting those ground level units, at least from that black awning over. So that was my just anchoring thought there.
Yeah, I think as long as we incorporate the plan set that you've seen tonight as part of the approval, I feel that the plans are clear enough about where those commercial spaces are. So if at building permit time they were in a very different location, I would have enough data to support them going back to where you see them tonight.
Because if we're lucky, we may even get a coffee shop in Wayzata out of this.
And Chair, I would just add that, I mean, that this is what you're seeing is the general plan.
Yeah.
And the general plan calls for those 3 units to be dedicated that way. That'll be incorporated in the approvals and in the PUD agreement. That will be a condition of final approval. So if they wanted to change those at any time, they'd have to come back and get an amendment to their PUD and their agreement. So I'm pretty confident that we'll have that buttoned up at the end.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so we talked about the rezoning, we talked about the shoreland aspects. I think we feel pretty confident with that. Do we need to go over any specifics and tie anything specifically other than the 2 points, which it meets the density and it meets the open space requirements? And the final is rezoning from C4A to a PUD. Does anyone have any thoughts or comments to that as we are deliberating? And I think we had a page for that as well, didn't we?
Yes, we do. And here's the rezoning criteria on the screen as well.
No, thank you.
I heard one comment affirming the letter E, the traffic generation was acceptable.
Yeah. I don't see any.
Good.
I mean, everything I wrote down when we were meeting was about positives, the sidewalk and seating, the idea of attracting 11-month residents plus. That would be wonderful. The management of parking, the excess and parking requirements met, the direction of traffic, the landscaping, just being really considerate of the neighbors as well as kind of weighing and balancing that with open space. And also the mechanical areas being recessed and concealed in the rooftop. I think that's, a really nice, you can tell you care about Wayzata when you start thinking at that level of detail. So unless there's any further comments from any of the commissioners, may we go ahead and attempt to structure a motion? Anyone? Commissioner Sorensen?
So you're looking for a motion?
I think so. I mean, I
Yeah,
haven't.
I think it
yeah.
seems appropriate, so. Well, I'd make a motion that this commission directs staff to prepare a planning commission report and recommendation with appropriate findings reflecting a recommendation of approval on the application for review and adoption at the next planning commission meeting, including the 4 conditions discussed tonight as outlined by Director Gellner.
That sounds perfect. May I have a
I'll second that.
No, nothing, attorney?
It was perfect.
Of course, it's Ken.
But make that in the minutes.
Gold star for Ken.
I'll second it, Douglas.
Thank you, Commissioner Douglas. Do we have further discussion? I think I'm going to do, and all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, the motion passes. The draft report and recommendation will be on the consent agenda at our next meeting, and after adoption, will go on to City Council for their consideration. Thank you to the applicant and staff and members of the public and commissioners for participating. Right, we can move on to other items. We have 2 things listed, review of the development activities and the meeting schedule for the Planning Commission.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Our next meeting will take place on Monday, August 21st. I will have the follow-up to our fence discussion that we had last time. We could have had it ready, but I decided to give Planner Corals a night off, so she'll be back in 2 weeks with some closure on the fence work that we did previously. And that'll be a little shorter of a night for us. We'll have this item on the consent agenda as well. So it'll be a little shorter of a night on August 21st. And then just note that first meeting in September is on a Wednesday because of Labor Day. So it's on Wednesday, September 6th. I think I'll have at least 1 public hearing that night, so save the date. And then we'll get back on a regular schedule really for the remainder of the year. I will try my very best to not have that December 18th meeting if possible due to holiday schedules. Keep it on your calendars for now. I can't fully confirm until we get closer. And then I wanted to point out here that you'll see that the council meeting dates for October have shifted 1 week back. So you'll see that the council meetings are on October 10th and 24th. This was an official change by the council. It shouldn't really affect our applicants too much. If you are a liaison on one of those days, you have a new liaison schedule on the following page so that you know to attend on the 10th and 24th. So it's Commissioner Schwalbe and Severson, so just note that change. And of course, with this liaison schedule, you can always switch with someone if you're out of town. Just feel free to connect with someone and switch if you need to.
Perfect.
All I have.
Thank you, Director Gellner. Thanks, everyone, for your participation. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
May I have a second?
Second, Schwalbe?
Further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Ayes have it. The motion passes, and the August 7th, 2023 was at a Planning Commission meeting is adjourned.